It happened on a Tuesday evening, one of those dull, unremarkable nights that you never expect to remember. I had just finished dinner, the TV humming softly in the background when my phone buzzed. A simple notification. A message from Dad, nothing unusual. Until I read the words. "We've all agreed you're out. Don't contact us again." For a few seconds, I honestly thought it was a mistake. I blinked. Read it again. And again. Every time the words hit harder, colder, heavier. It felt like someone had just pulled the ground out from under me. I stared at the screen, my reflection faintly visible in the dark glass. My chest tightened. My hands trembled. I tried to breathe, but the air in my room suddenly felt thick, heavy with something I couldn't name. I scrolled back up, looking for context. Maybe I'd missed another message? Maybe he sent it to the wrong person? But no, my name was right there. It was meant for me. I opened the family group chat. Silent. The last message was from 2 weeks ago. My sister posting a photo from a family dinner. A dinner I wasn't invited to. My heart sank further. I typed, "Dad, what do you mean?" But before I could hit send, I noticed the tiny gray text under his name. "You can no longer reply to this conversation." He'd blocked me. That realization hit harder than the message itself. Blocked. By my own father. I dropped the phone onto the couch and just sat there, staring into nothing. A part of me wanted to cry. Another part wanted to scream. But mostly, I just felt empty. My thoughts raced. Did I say something wrong? Did someone tell him a lie? What could I have possibly done to deserve being erased like this? Every answer I came up with only led to more confusion. Because the truth was, I'd always been the one trying to hold the family together, trying to make peace, trying to earn love that always felt conditional. And yet here I was, cut off, deleted, voted out of my own bloodline. I picked up the phone again, scrolling through old messages, old photos, anything that might explain it. Family vacations, birthdays, moments that once felt warm, now felt like scenes from someone else's life. It was surreal. How can a lifetime of love and loyalty end with a single message? I wanted to call my mom, but I knew she'd seen it too. If Dad said, "We've all agreed," it meant she was part of it. Maybe even the one who suggested it. That thought hurt the most. I sat there for what felt like hours, the phone still glowing faintly beside me, replaying every moment, every fight, every word I'd ever said. Trying to find the one that broke us. But deep down, something didn't add up. It was too sudden, too cold. This wasn't just family drama. Something bigger was happening, something hidden beneath the surface, and I could feel it in my gut. As I finally turned off the phone and stared into the dark, one thought kept echoing in my mind. That message wasn't just about family. It was about control. The house had never felt so quiet. Even the ticking of the wall clock sounded louder, sharper, like every second was reminding me that time was still moving, even if my world wasn't. My phone lay face down on the table, the screen black. No new messages, no calls, no one checking in to ask if I was okay. That silence, it wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the kind that presses down on your chest until you can't breathe. I walked through the house slowly, every corner whispering memories back to me. The sofa where Mom and I used to watch old movies. The dining table where Dad once laughed so hard he cried. The photo frames lined neatly on the wall, a perfect little gallery of smiles. But now all those faces looked like strangers. I tried to shake it off, telling myself maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe they'd call tomorrow. Maybe Dad would realize what he'd done and try to make things right. But days passed. Then weeks. And the silence only grew louder. I started thinking about everything I'd done for that family, the little sacrifices no one ever noticed. How I'd driven Mom to her doctor appointments when Dad was too busy. How I helped my sister Laura cover up her failed exams so Dad wouldn't explode. How I worked late shifts just to chip in when the bills piled up. Every single time, I told myself it was worth it. Because that's what family meant, right? You give, you forgive, and you hold on, no matter how heavy it gets. But maybe that was my mistake. holding on to something that was already letting go of me. Lara, my sister, had always been different. She knew how to get what she wanted. With charm, with words, with that practiced innocence that fooled almost everyone. Except me. I'd seen the way she twisted stories, how she could turn a simple misunderstanding into a full-blown crisis, always playing the victim. And Dad always believed her. She was his favorite. His brilliant little girl. And me? I was just the one who should have known better. Mom, on the other hand, wasn't cruel. Just silent. She had this way of pretending things were fine, even when the house was falling apart. She called it keeping peace. But to me, it always felt like denial. And Dad, he was the kind of man who wanted everything neat and obedient. Respect wasn't earned, it was demanded. He had secrets too, the kind that lived in locked drawers and hushed phone calls. The kind that made him flinch whenever someone said the word trust. I used to look up to him. Now, I wasn't sure if I ever really knew him at all. The nights were the worst. That's when the flashbacks came, not as memories, but as ghosts. Mom's soft voice saying, "Don't argue, honey. Just let it go." Dad's sharp tone cutting through the air. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Lara's smile. That same smile she wore right before throwing me under the bus for something she did. It was like living in two worlds at once. The quiet, empty house around me, and the storm of the past replaying in my head. Every word, every glance, every betrayal I'd ignored came rushing back, and suddenly, that message, "We've all agreed you're out," didn't feel so sudden anymore. It felt planned, calculated, and for the first time I wondered if this silence wasn't punishment. Maybe it was their way of erasing me, of rewriting the story without the one person who knew too much. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I whispered to myself, if this is how they want it, fine. But one day they'll remember why they needed me. Because deep down, I knew something they didn't. Silence doesn't last forever. It always breaks. And when it does, the truth has a way of echoing louder than words ever could. Before everything fell apart, we looked perfect, at least from the outside. The kind of family people would nod at in church, whispering, "They've got it all together." We had the smiles, the neatly framed photos, the laughter that echoed during dinners. But behind those walls, the cracks were already spreading. They say every family has secrets. Ours just learned how to smile through them. When I was a kid, I used to think Dad was a hero. He wore confidence like armor, sharp suit, sharp words, sharp eyes. People respected him. At home, though, respect meant obedience. If you disagreed, you weren't being honest. You were being disrespectful. I remember once, I must have been around 12. I asked him why Lara got away with skipping chores while I got grounded for forgetting mine. He didn't even look up from his newspaper. He just said, "Because she listens." That was his answer to everything. Lara listened, I argued. And that was the start of it, the invisible line that divided the house. Mom tried to play the peacemaker. She'd come into my room afterward and whisper, "He doesn't mean it, you know. He's just tired." But over time, her words started to sound more like excuses than comfort. She was always walking on eggshells trying to keep everyone calm, pretending nothing was wrong. And I guess I learned to do the same. We became experts at pretending. Pretending we were close. Pretending we trusted each other. Pretending that love wasn't something you had to earn. As the years passed, the favoritism became clearer. When Lara failed a class, Dad blamed the teacher. When I scored less than perfect, he blamed me. "She's still young," he'd say about her. "You're old enough to take responsibility," he'd say to me. I told myself it didn't matter and that I'd work harder, be better, make him proud. But no matter what I did, I was always the one being compared, corrected, or criticized. And Lara, she learned how to use that. She figured out that tears were her weapon. That one, "Dad, he yelled at me," could turn me into the villain instantly. I'd argue. She'd cry. He'd take her side. It became a script, one I didn't even realize I'd been cast in until it was too late. Still, there were good days, moments that made me believe the cracks could heal. Like the night we all stayed up watching old home videos. Lara was laughing so hard she nearly spilled her popcorn. Dad smiled at me then, genuinely, and said, "You've grown up to be someone I can count on." That one sentence carried me for months. It was like getting a drop of water after years in a desert. But words from Dad came with conditions. They expired quickly, usually the moment Lara needed something. I started noticing other things too. Whispered phone calls that stopped when I entered the room. Letters tucked away in Dad's desk. Mom's anxious glances whenever I asked questions about money or the house, or why Dad suddenly stopped talking to his brother. It wasn't until much later that I realized our family wasn't built on trust. It was built on control. Control through guilt. Control through silence. Control through love that had strings attached. I remember one Sunday dinner. Lara was bragging about some internship Dad helped her get. I congratulated her, but before I could even finish, she looked at me and said, "Maybe if you weren't always trying to prove everyone wrong, Dad would help you too." The room went quiet. Dad didn't defend me. Mom didn't speak. I laughed it off, pretending it didn't sting. But inside, something cracked. Because in that moment, I realized they didn't see me as family anymore. They saw me as the problem that kept their version of peace from existing. Looking back now, I think the signs were always there. I just didn't want to believe them. I thought we were close, I really did. But love in our home came with conditions, and every time I failed to meet them, I lost a little more of my place at that table. The family portrait still hangs in their living room, or at least it used to. All of us smiling, arms around each other. If you didn't know better, you'd think we were happy. You'd think we loved each other unconditionally. But I look at that picture in my mind now, and all I can see are the cracks, tiny, silent fractures that no one wanted to see, slowly splitting us apart long before that message ever arrived. I remember sitting in my room staring at that text. "We've all agreed you're out." It wasn't just a message. It was a sentence, a final judgment from the very people I had built my world around. For days, I replayed every memory in my head, searching for the moment everything went wrong. And then, piece by piece, the truth started to reveal itself. It began months before the message, small changes I ignored. My sister, always the golden child, started visiting my parents more often. She'd smile sweetly when I was around. But her eyes told another story. Whispers would stop when I entered the room. Conversations would change direction. And when I asked what was wrong, Mom would just say, "You're imagining things." But I wasn't. The turning point came after my grandfather passed away. He'd left behind his house, the old one near the lake. He used to say, "This home should stay with the one who values family, not just money." And everyone knew he meant me. I was the one who took care of him when he was sick. The one who stayed up at night when no one else bothered to call. But when the will was read, something didn't feel right. My name wasn't there. The house was listed under my sister's name. And everyone acted like that was normal. I asked my father about it. He didn't even look at me. Just said, "Your sister has more stability. It's what's best for the family." That word again, family, used like a weapon. What they didn't know was, I had proof. An old letter my grandfather wrote before he passed. He'd left it for me, tucked inside one of his books. And in his own handwriting, he said, "The house belongs to you. Don't let them change that." So I confronted them, calmly at first. I showed the letter to my mother. She froze and wouldn't meet my eyes. Then my sister laughed, that sharp, cruel laugh she always used when she felt cornered. "Maybe you forged it," she said. "You've always been jealous." I felt the air leave my lungs. Jealous of what? Of being invisible my whole life? That's when my father stepped in, cold, distant, final. He said, "This conversation is over. Don't bring it up again." And just like that, I became the enemy. They twisted my words, my intentions, everything I had done for them. By the end of the week, the story had changed. I was the greedy one, the liar, the ungrateful child. And that's when the text came, the message that shattered whatever was left of us. I stared at it for hours, heart pounding, mind blank. But beneath the heartbreak, a quiet thought began to form. If they could betray me for property, for control, then maybe they never saw me as family at all. And that realization hurt more than the text ever could. But what they didn't realize was that I wasn't going to stay silent anymore, because this time I had nothing left to lose and everything to expose. The days after the text felt endless. Mornings blurred into nights, and the silence became unbearable. It wasn't the kind of silence that brings peace. It was heavy, suffocating, like the air itself didn't want to move. I'd wake up, check my phone, hoping maybe someone had changed their mind. A message, a missed call, anything. But there was nothing, just the same empty screen staring back at me. The house that once felt warm now echoed with absence. Every photo on the wall, every piece of furniture, reminded me of them. The laughter we used to share over dinner, the inside jokes, the birthdays, the hugs that once felt real. Now they were ghosts, haunting me from the corners of my own memories. I stopped answering calls. Not that there were many. Stopped cooking, stopped caring. The walls closed in tighter each day, and I could almost hear the echoes of my own heartbeat, loud, slow, and lonely. Sometimes I'd catch myself talking out loud, as if someone was listening. "Mom, do you even think about me? Dad, was it really that easy to cut me off?" But no one answered. The nights were the worst. Rain would tap against the windows, and that sound, that soft, steady rhythm, felt like time mocking me. Outside, the world went on. Inside, everything had stopped. I'd sit on the floor with my back against the cold wall, scrolling through old photos. Family trips. Smiles that looked real, but now every smile felt like a lie frozen in time. There were moments when I wanted to scream, just to feel alive again. But the thought always ended the same way. What's the point of screaming when no one's listening? It was a strange kind of pain, not sharp, but deep, like a slow erosion from the inside out. I tried to tell myself I was strong, that I didn't need them. But the truth was, I did. Or maybe I just needed closure, some explanation, some reason. Days turned into weeks and I started to fade, not physically but emotionally. I laughed less, spoke less, existed less. The person I used to be was slipping away, one silent night at a time. And yet somewhere in that emptiness, a small spark remained. It wasn't hope, not yet. It was something else, something darker, sharper. A whisper inside my head saying, "They took everything from you, but they can't take the truth." And for the first time in weeks, I listened. It started on an ordinary Tuesday. No dramatic storm, no sudden phone call, just me, sitting in my dimly lit living room, scrolling through my old emails out of boredom, or maybe desperation. I wasn't looking for answers anymore. I had already accepted that my family had erased me, digitally, emotionally, completely. But then something caught my eye. A name I hadn't seen in years, Karen, my father's old assistant. Her email was buried deep, dated months before the text that shattered everything. The subject line read, about the property papers, urgent. My heart started racing. Property papers? I didn't even know there were any property papers. My father had always said we didn't own much, that everything was taken care of. But curiosity took over, and I opened it. The email thread was short but enough to make my hands tremble. Karen had attached a scanned document, something about a transfer of ownership, with my father's signature and my sister's name on it. No mention of me, not even once. My breath caught in my throat. Was this what it was about? The family decision to cut me off. Was it really about money? Or something deeper? Something uglier? I tried to calm myself. Maybe it was just business. Maybe they planned to tell me later. But the unease didn't go away. That same night, I searched through old text messages trying to connect the dots. Then I found it, a conversation with my mother, a few weeks before everything went silent. She had written, "Some things are better left alone, sweetheart. Not everyone needs to know the details." At the time, I brushed it off, but now it sounded like a warning. The next day, I reached out to an old family friend, Mr. Peterson, who had always been close to my dad. He hesitated at first, said he didn't want to get involved. But eventually, the guilt got to him. He sighed and said quietly, "You were never supposed to see that document." My heart froze. "What do you mean?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "Your father made certain decisions, ones your sister didn't agree with. Let's just say she made sure things went her way." My stomach turned. He wouldn't say more, but it was enough. Enough to know that the betrayal ran deeper than I had imagined. As I sat there that night, the pieces finally started fitting together. The cold tone in my mother's voice, the quick avoidance whenever I asked about family finances, the sudden agreement that I was no longer part of the family. They didn't exile me to protect themselves from pain. They exiled me to protect their secrets. And for the first time, anger burned brighter than heartbreak. The silence wasn't my punishment, it was their cover-up. They hadn't just betrayed me. They'd built a wall of lies and hoped I'd never see what was behind it. But now, I had seen enough to know where to dig. I realized they didn't cut me off to protect themselves. They did it to hide something. And I swore that night I was going to find out exactly what that something was. Something shifted inside me after that night. For weeks, I had been drowning in pain, replaying the text, the silence, the betrayal, over and over again like a cruel movie stuck on repeat. But now the tears had dried. The shaking hands had steadied. And for the first time since my world fell apart, I felt calm. It wasn't the calm of acceptance. It was the calm before a storm, quiet, deliberate, and focused. I realized that revenge wasn't about yelling or breaking things. It wasn't about making them feel my pain. It was about truth. And truth didn't need noise. It only needed time and precision. So I started small. I made lists. Names, dates, accounts, conversations. Every lie I remembered, every inconsistency I'd once brushed off, I wrote down. I revisited old memories like a detective walking through a crime scene. Except this time I was the evidence they'd tried to erase. I went back through emails, bank records, and old family photos. There were patterns everywhere. Details that seemed meaningless back then, but now whispered secrets I had missed. My sister's sudden promotion. My mother's subtle distance before the fallout. My father's quiet withdrawal from our late-night talks. It was all connected. But I wasn't going to confront them blindly. I'd seen what chaos looked like, the pain it left behind. This time I wanted control. So I reached out to a lawyer, pretending it was about something simple, an old document I needed help verifying. When he looked at the papers, his brow furrowed. "These signatures don't match perfectly," he said, and in that moment I knew. I had found the first real crack in their story. Still, I didn't lash out. Didn't call them. Didn't post anything online. I went quiet, completely quiet. Because silence, I learned, unnerves people more than words ever could. I started rebuilding myself piece by piece. A new job, new friends, a new rhythm to my days. The loneliness that used to crush me slowly turned into strength. They had taken away my place in the family, but not my will to stand. And I wanted them to see that. I wanted them to see that I didn't need their name, their house, or their approval to exist. That I could rise, gracefully, quietly, without them. Revenge wasn't about shouting. It was about showing them what silence can do. And as I stood in front of the mirror one morning, looking into my own eyes, steady, unbroken, I smiled for the first time in months. Not because I had won yet, but because I had finally found something worth fighting for, myself. The plan wasn't just to expose them. It was to reclaim everything they thought they had taken, my dignity, my truth, and my peace. This time I wasn't the outcast. I was the calm in the storm they didn't see coming. It happened on a Sunday, the kind of day that once meant family brunches, laughter, and the smell of pancakes filling the kitchen. But this Sunday, the air felt different, heavy, electric. The same house that had once felt like home now looked like a stage, and every one of them, my parents, my sister, were actors hiding behind polished masks. I had called ahead, told them I wanted to talk. No one asked why. Maybe they thought I was coming to apologize. To crawl back. They didn't know that the person walking through that door wasn't the same one they had exiled. When I stepped inside, my mother's eyes darted toward me, then quickly away. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. My sister, ever the performer, gave a cold smile. "Didn't expect to see you here again," she said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. I smiled back, calm, measured. "Yeah, I figured it's time to stop running from ghosts." There was a pause. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have. Every sound, every breath felt amplified. My father finally spoke. "What is this about exactly?" I looked him straight in the eye. "The truth," I said quietly. "The truth you all buried." He frowned. My sister laughed nervously. "Truth? What truth?" "You're the one who—" I cut her off, my voice steady but sharp. Don't start rewriting history again." I reached into my bag and pulled out the printed documents, the ones with my father's forged signature, the fake transfer dates, the messages they didn't think I'd ever see. I placed them neatly on the table, the paper making a sound that felt louder than thunder. "You told me I was out of the family," I said slowly. "But the real reason wasn't loyalty, was it? It was greed. It was lies." My sister's smirk faltered. My mother's lips trembled. And my father, he just sat there silent, the weight of years pressing down on him. "You think I didn't notice?" I continued. "The sudden secrecy, the missing accounts, the whispers when I walked into the room. You made me believe I was the problem, but I was just the distraction, the easiest one to blame." The silence that followed was deafening. Then my mother spoke, barely above a whisper. "We did what we thought was best for the family." I looked at her, really looked at her. "No, Mom. You did what was easiest for you. There's a difference." For a moment, I saw something in her eyes. Guilt, regret, maybe even love buried under layers of denial. But my sister, she couldn't hide behind the mask anymore. Her voice cracked. "You were always Dad's favorite. You had everything. I was just jealous." I finished for her. "So you took what wasn't yours and convinced them to erase me?" Her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't the kind that asked for forgiveness. They were the kind that come when the truth finally corners you. I gathered the papers back into my folder, the tremor in my hands replaced by something stronger. Control. "I'm not here for revenge," I said quietly. "I just needed you to see what silence can do." I turned toward the door, my voice calm, almost gentle. "You tried to cut me out to protect your lies. But all you did was show me who you really are." No one stopped me as I walked away. Not my father. Not my mother. Not even my sister. The house that once echoed with laughter now echoed with truth. Raw, ugly, and finally free. And as I stepped outside, the sunlight hit my face. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. Not because the past was gone, but because I was no longer chained to it. Sometimes the loudest justice is delivered in silence. The days after the confrontation felt eerily calm, too calm, like the world was holding its breath. I didn't post anything online, didn't make a scene, didn't chase closure anymore. I simply let the truth exist. And truth, as I learned, has a way of traveling on its own. It started with whispers. A colleague of my sister's reached out. "Hey, is it true what people are saying about the documents?" Then my father's business partner called, asking about certain irregularities he'd noticed in the transfers. I didn't have to say much. I just confirmed what they already suspected, and the rest unraveled by itself. Karma didn't come with fire or fury. It came quietly, step by step, stripping away their masks. My father's reputation, the one he had spent decades building, began to crumble under scrutiny. Meetings got canceled. Partners grew distant. The same people who once admired him now questioned everything he stood for. My sister, the mastermind behind the manipulation, suddenly found herself cornered. Friends stopped answering. Invitations disappeared. Her perfect image, the one she had crafted so carefully, cracked under the weight of her own lies. The more she tried to defend herself, the more people saw through the act. And my mother, she was caught in the middle. For years, she played the role of peacekeeper, pretending everything was fine. But now she couldn't look away. The silence she once used to protect them became the silence that haunted her. I heard she barely spoke for days, sitting alone, staring at the empty dining table where we once all sat together. For the first time, their silence wasn't control. It was fear. They were no longer the untouchable family that decided who belonged and who didn't. Now, they were the ones being avoided, whispered about in the same circles they once ruled. But I didn't celebrate. There was no satisfaction in watching them fall, only a strange, quiet relief. They were living in the truth they had created, and truth once exposed doesn't need revenge to finish the job. I kept moving forward. I didn't need to see their downfall in detail. I had already lived through enough pain. But I could feel the shift in the air. The power they once held over me was gone. Completely gone. Every decision they made, every lie they told had finally come full circle. And as much as they tried to silence me, it was their own voices that betrayed them in the end. For the first time, their silence wasn't control. It was fear. And in that fear, I found my peace. Time moved differently after everything fell apart. There were no more anxious mornings, no more sleepless nights wondering if they would ever reach out again. The silence that once haunted me had changed. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. It was mine. I remember sitting by the window one evening, the same spot where I had cried months ago after that first text. But this time, I wasn't replaying the past. I was watching the sunset, feeling a kind of calm I hadn't known in years. It wasn't joy exactly. It was something deeper, acceptance. I thought a lot about what I'd lost. A family that wasn't really a family, love that came with conditions, a sense of belonging that was built on lies. But with every loss, I found something more valuable, myself. The person who once begged for their approval had disappeared. In their place stood someone who understood that peace isn't given, it's chosen. That sometimes walking away is not defeat, it's survival. I didn't gloat when karma caught up with them. I didn't need to. Because revenge wasn't my victory. Clarity was. Freedom was. Finally being able to breathe without the weight of their judgment. That was my victory. One afternoon, I received a short email from my mother. Just a few words. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to fix it. I stared at it for a long time. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger, just a quiet sadness for what could have been. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. Maybe someday, when the pain fades enough, I'll answer. Or maybe silence will be the only answer left. As I stood up to close the window, I realized something. I didn't need their validation, their love, or even their apologies. All I needed was the truth, and I had it. I didn't win by hurting them. I won by walking away with my truth intact. Life feels different now, slower, clearer, real. The world outside is still unpredictable, still imperfect. But I finally know where I stand. And as I step forward, not as their child, not as their disappointment, but as me, I carry one quiet promise, that no one ever again will decide my worth for me. I wrote it one night when the rain wouldn't stop. Not because I planned to send it, but because some words need to exist, even if no one ever reads them. The ink bled slightly on the page, as if it too carried the weight of everything left unsaid. Dear family, I used to think I needed you to be whole. That family was something unbreakable, something sacred. But now I understand, and family isn't blood, it's truth. It's the people who choose you, even when the world doesn't. When you sent that message, we've agreed you're no longer part of the family. I thought my life had ended. I thought I'd never recover from that kind of rejection. But somehow I did. And strangely, I'm grateful. Because losing you forced me to find myself. It showed me what strength really feels like. Not loud, not angry, but quiet and unshakable. The kind that grows in the dark when no one's watching. I used to replay every memory, wondering what I did wrong. Now I see that I wasn't the broken one. I was just the one who saw too much. You taught me that silence can be a weapon, but it can also be a shield, and I chose to make it my peace. I forgive you, not because you asked for it, but because I refuse to carry the weight anymore. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't a gift to the person who hurt you. It's the freedom you give yourself when you decide to stop bleeding for people who never looked back. Maybe one day, you'll think of me, not as the problem, but as the mirror that reflected what you didn't want to face. And maybe then, you'll understand that cutting someone out doesn't erase the truth. It only delays it. I don't need your apology. I don't need your approval. I just hope wherever you are, you find the kind of peace I had to build on my own. I folded the letter and slipped it into an old box. The same one that still holds a few childhood photos and a keychain my dad once gave me. Then I sealed it shut, placed it on the top shelf, and walked away. Outside, the rain had stopped. The world felt new again, washed, quiet, alive. In the end, I didn't need to send the letter, because the moment I wrote it, I was finally free. And with that, the story came full circle. Not with a shout, not with revenge, but with something far stronger. Peace.